All right, it says it is live. We are live. We are here live. Welcome back once again. This is Amuna Yisrael Soulonomics 101. The last time you heard from me was about 9 days ago, where I finally was able to watch this documentary. And in that time, um, as we wait for some people to come on, because what I have possibly stumbled upon is, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not even in my usual cherry type self right now because I'm really trying to process it all. But this is the first portion of what I have to share. Okay. And the question is unraveling. Oh, well, I've named this Unraveling R. Kelly. Is he brain damaged? It's the question. Now, in this time, I have listened. Oh, thanks for the audio books. There's one sister on YouTube in particular who underwent the endeavor of reading a number of the books, the autobiographies, and the so that actually helped expedite this process. Okay. Needless to say, it's a lot. I feel drained. I feel drained just having to basically just having to listen to all of it. You know what I mean? And so I'm going to take the time. I just want to get this out so that I can move on to other parts of this narrative. And I took a Soulonomics approach as always. And so feel free to share this video. I'm going to get into it. Okay. So let me hold on 1 second. Let me make sure everything is good here. And shout out to all the people who just subscribed. This is not going to be what you usually regularly hear. What we're hearing regularly is a lot of celebrity gossip, a lot of tit for tat. Oh, this is happening now, or that's happening. And that in itself is draining. And my purpose for the study is for edification. Right now, Robert Kelly is in the spotlight for many reasons. Much of it is for persecution. Much of it is for finally coming to light all of the things that were alleged against him. And so I think we pretty much got those bases covered, right? I did see a video, and I'm gonna do another video, but I saw where a radio station was speaking to Ayanla and asking her why, she wasn't able to work with them. And then she gave the full disclosure about the process in which she works with people and saying that she doesn't think he was fit to undergo the process. And I was like, wow, that's interesting, because I did see the brother also on another station saying that he wants the family to get help. That's Carrie, the younger brother, that he wants the family to get help and was hoping that Iyanla could help. So if Iyanla Fix My Life is saying, I don't know how to fix this because you're not willing, or maybe you're not willing to fix this, so I'm not really sure that if I can fix it for you. That was deep. But nonetheless, Soulonomics is looking at it from another perspective, and I'm going to present to you something today, and feel free to let me know your thoughts, give me your feedback. Like I said, I'm not my usual pepper self. This took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of me. But anywho, okay, this is a medical disclaimer, y'all. This is a medical disclaimer. The content is not intended to be suitable for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. That's just a disclaimer because we're going to talk a little bit about the possibility of him being misdiagnosed. Okay. One thing that I'm going to try to stay online. This is why I did this little presentation. So I'm going to try not to go off too much. So let's just get into it. Misdiagnosed, unraveling R. Kelly. Is he brain damaged? That's the question. And this is a quote. They still don't know what caused my problem. Robert Sylvester Kelly from the Solar Coaster book. I had to open it up by saying wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. That's Proverbs 4:7. So I say that to say that there's a lot of piecemeal information floating all over the internet, floating all over the blogosphere. And of course, there's these little pieces that are put on the table, and we need these little pieces to try to put together this puzzle. Okay. And wisdom is the principal thing. That means it precedes all things. But with all you get understanding. And again, like I said, what I've seen amongst many of the um, persons who are saying that they were victimized is a lot of people are stuck in a space of they don't understand. They don't understand why he would do this to them. They don't understand what's wrong with him. There's a lot of not understanding what they were witness to, what they experienced, and what was taking place. Okay. So here we have some pictures. We have R. Kelly in the orange jumpsuit when he was standing trial. We have another interview here, and then we have young Robert Kelly. Now, this young Robert Kelly is who actually caught my attention. He, dealing with Soulonomics and dealing with what's going on and where it starts. That the eyes of this young Robert here, his face, that level of innocency that's on his face is who kind of drew me in to say, you know what, let me really take a look at this before we can get to the victims. And I know sometimes we want to jump ahead and we want to get to the victims. We want to get to what was wrong. We want to get to all of those things. But before we can, let me make sure that my sound is good. And I know sometimes it's good. So before we can, to a certain degree, depending on what level of understanding, because I understand that everybody plays a part. Some people want immediate justice, those who were directly affected. So people may be into it or looking at it for different reasons. And so some may not have the patience, time, or desire to find out what happened to him as a child. But for the sake of Soulonomics, I happen to want to, because he represents so many other young children who, if missed or misdiagnosed, can fall through the cracks, have fallen through the cracks, and continue to fall through the cracks. So I'm going to be reading some quotes from his book as well as other things. And he says, "It wasn't until I was an adult that an educator told me about dyslexia. But my disability is something more than dyslexia. They still don't know what caused my problem. I'll never know if it was possibly brain damage, as one specialist diagnosed, or an accident of spirit." This is an outtake from Solar Coaster. I'll read a little part again. He's saying that when he was older, an educator told him that it was dyslexia, but he knew internally, he says, but my disability is something more than dyslexia. They still don't know what caused my problem. I'll never know if it was possibly brain damage, as one specialist diagnosed. So one specialist, apparently his mother was taking him to different places to kind of find to understand what was going on. And one specialist says it was brain damage. But, that's interesting. I found that interesting. So let's read about dyslexia and why he's possibly discounting dyslexia. Dyslexia is a learning disorder that affects your ability to read, spell, write, and speak. Kids who have it are often smart and hardworking, but they have trouble connecting the letters they see to the sounds those letters make. About 5% to 10% of Americans have some symptoms of dyslexia, such as slow reading, trouble spelling, or mix-up words. Adults can have this learning disorder as well. Some people are diagnosed early in life. Others don't realize they have dyslexia until they get older. So again, that was something that became popularized, and a lot of people say, well, this person has dyslexia and that person has dyslexia, and it kind of became normalized. But intuitively, he's saying here that he knew that this wasn't the fullness of the problem, that it was more than just dyslexia. So let's look at the brain damage that one specialist suggested that he possibly has. What does it mean to have congenital brain defect? Congenital brain defects are abnormalities in the brain that are present at birth. There are many different types of these defects. They can vary greatly from mild to severe. The brain begins to form in the first month after conception and will continue to form and develop throughout pregnancy. Development of the brain begins from a small spatial plate of cells on the surface of the embryo. These cells grow and form the different regions of the brain. When this process is disrupted or interrupted, it can cause structural defects in the brain and skull. Normal brain function can be impaired even if only the skull growth is upset. And that's from Healthline. You can definitely look up congenital brain damage. So one person would say it's brain damage, then one would have to ask, what could have possibly disrupted or interrupted the natural process of his brain developing if indeed he has something more than just dyslexia? And there's somebody sitting right now in the heat of all of this back and forth, possibly saying that they object because R. Kelly is a musical genius. How could he possibly be brain damaged? And again, I haven't really heard this information in full anywhere. I just saw bits and pieces. Let me just backtrack a little bit. This is something that I'm looking at all of the pieces, listening to all of the testimonies, the majority of the testimonies, reading or listening to the audiobook of his autobiography, as well as listening to different interviews and seeing a common theme that kept coming up over and over and over again. So so just stick with me on this. So somebody may have an objection to say he's a musical genius. How could he possibly be brain damaged? Because again, when everybody's talking about giving R. Kelly a pass, it's about all of his musical accomplishments, how he's the best to ever do it in his genre and his field. And so people are looking at his musical genius. This is how he was able to get in contact with a number of females, countless females, hundreds of thousands of women, and then from there pick those who he wanted to engage in whatever capacity because of his musical genius. Okay, so one will just see that musical genius, that talent, that ability, oftentimes is blocking the vision of those to see what could possibly be wrong beyond that. But I'm gonna continue. Another objection. What or who could have caused this brain damage? That's another objection. If he does have brain damage, I'm not saying brain damage. He said in his book that a specialist says that he could have been brain damage. And he's saying in his book that he didn't understand, or he doesn't think he ever would understand what was the cause. So it's not like he didn't hear this possibility before. He actually shared it with the world, but there wasn't a specific cause that was given to how and why this could have happened. Another objection may be this is just an attempt to excuse his behavior. I noticed that when we try to bring context and understanding to a situation, oftentimes we don't want to take the time, effort to hear it out because we feel as though it's an excuse. It's not an excuse. It's understanding what it's the same thing with those who are coming against this singer for his actions. One can do the same thing with them and say, okay, you're making an excuse as to why you accepted his advantage. You see what I'm saying? So just to hear out the matter before we fully say we're judging either which way. Why is the cause of this brain damage still unknown? That may be another question, like Amuna. If that be the case, then why is this still unknown? Why no one else knows about it? Why we don't hear anybody reporting on it? Why we don't hear TMZ talking about it? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe nobody's interested in this portion. Maybe they want the juiciness or, the sexual tales of all the things that happen. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not that important, but it is there. It was there. And I just decided to explore it. So facts about the hidden disability. We're going to talk a little bit about a hidden disability. He knows to some degree, and he said it in other spaces, that he has a level of a disability. He expresses frustration with this level of disability, inability to learn and process information. He's spoken about it in times past. He speaks about it often, which means that this is something in the forefront of his mind. It's something that's been troubling him and plaguing him, but he couldn't really understand it. Okay, so this and I put blanks because we're going to play a little game here. We're going to go through this discussion and we're going to give all of the characteristics before we come to the conclusion that actually dropped in my spirit. It actually dropped in my spirit, and when it did, I was like, what? And I began to search it, and then all of the pieces began to fall together. Okay. So blank is widely understood to be a hidden disability. Like I said, anytime you see this blank, it is the name of this hidden disability that will be revealed at the end of this discussion. Although it has been over 40 years since the harmful effects of a blank were identified in medical literature, the majority of individuals with blank of any age are not properly diagnosed. And this is why you see the name of this misdiagnosed is R. Kelly brain damage. Because again, we have some clues. We're just following the cookie trail here. So it's been 40 years since the harmful effects of this hidden disability were identified in medical literature, and the majority. So if perchance he falls in this majority, again, this is not a medical diagnosis, this is just an observation, then it will make sense based on what they're saying that a large majority are not properly diagnosed. Okay. All right, let's go on. People with blank may struggle to socialize with others their own age. One of the foremost things that are in the people's minds right now is whether or not R. Kelly is a pedophile, whether or not he preys on people, women younger than him. What I literally like backed up off the computer when I saw this because it didn't make any sense, but then it did make sense. So people with this particular disability may struggle to socialize with others their own age. Also, it may be difficult for them to realize that a person might pretend to be a friend in order to take advantage of the individual with this disability. And he has made songs about it. He's spoken about his lack of trust. And this is one of the situations that come up over and over and over again that the women who were in his space experiences, which is this lack of trust for quote friends or people. And so one thing, a reoccurring theme is that he's controlling. That's a reoccurring theme, right? This can have serious psychological, criminal, and financial consequences, which is what he's enduring now. And by the way, I didn't make this up. At the bottom of the screen is where I am getting this information from. It is important that people with this disability understand what is a healthy relationship. I actually just watched a quick video of a new girl who just come out who said that he asked at first to kiss her and she thought it was inappropriate. And then he asked to hug her and then he proceeded to kiss her. And then she found that to be inappropriate. So they have a lack of understanding of what is a healthy relationship. Again, I'm not yet talking about the molestation or the incest or the abuse. I'm just talking about these are the factors of this particular disability before any of those things. So just imagine those things that we learn about later are overlaid over this disability that affects you on another level. Lying can occur when a person with blank has poor memory and creates a story to fill in the gaps. I saw somebody make note of this when they said that in the book, he said he died by his mother's bedside. And in another interview, he said that he went back to the studio and then he got the call that his mother passed away. In both accounts, he was saying his mother was telling him she didn't want to see him in this way. And she pushed him away. In one account, he stayed. In the other account, he went back to the studio. Okay. Again, we're looking at all of the possible symptoms of a person with this particular hidden disability. People with blank frequently possess artistic. Again, like I said, when I told you this information kind of like just dropped in my spirit. And then because I am who I am, I went to go diligently inquire. And now I'm sharing with you what it is that I have found. And hopefully it can get into the right hands so that we can begin having conversations that are centered around some of the true core issues that we're looking at here. Not to discount anyone's experience, but if you misdiagnose the problem, then it will continue. Okay. People with blank frequently possess artistic or musical talents which exceed even that of the typical person of their age. I'll read that again. People with blank frequently possess artistic or musical talents which exceed that of the typical person of their age. Research has estimated that an 18-year-old person with blank has artistic abilities similar to a 29-year-old. Again, this individual has been and is being lauded for his musical talents and abilities. He possesses this musical genius that was far beyond his age, even when he began, and this is what pulled people in. People with blank are talented storytellers, actors, and comedians. Now, I have to tell the truth. I haven't seen R. Kelly probably since the 90s. I really wasn't really paying a lot of attention. And so for the first time, in this research, I went back and watched In the Closet, which had millions and millions of views. I've never seen it before. And it was this week. I just went back and I'm like, wow, that is a lot. And the whole time he's doing it, I'm thinking, but they said he can't read or write. So how is he remembering all of this? Okay, music can also be an outlet to release anger, revenge, or other strong emotions. Now, if you look at his catalog, how extensive it is, how many people he's worked with, and the fact that he talks about music being this outlet for him, then he falls right into this category. When it becomes difficult to communicate with words, a person with blank can use music to express how he or she feels. I watched the GQ, like I told you, man, it's a lot. I watched the GQ interview, and on the GQ interview for 45 minutes, he is singing or talking his experience. Okay. I'm like 45 minutes of singing, but he was talking. He'll be talking and then he busts out into song and then he talks again. And in places where he can't remember, this is how he's expressing himself, strong emotions in this space. Like those suffering from mental illness or traumatic brain injury, people with blank often use music as therapy. If you change the way you look at things, the way you look at things begin to change. So now we're reading all of the criteria, or a lot of the criteria. So they're like, oh, sis, man, when are we going to get to some more of this stuff? Okay, here goes some more. Based on studies of 415 individuals with diagnosed blank, again, like I said, keep holding on, I'll give you the blank at the end, from age 6 to 51, this research shows that about half of the individuals with blank reported having been in trouble with the law or have had repeated problems with inappropriate sexual behavior. I think I'm gonna just kind of keep going through, but I hope you're keeping a checklist of all of the things that there should be like bells ringing, like ding, 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 ding. And all I can say at the end, it's a strong possibility. Okay. So this person who suffers with this particular diagnosis reported having been in trouble with the law and repeated problems with inappropriate sexual behavior. Children and adults of all ages along the spectrum of this hidden disease or hidden disability report a history of the following sexual behaviors, starting with the most prevalent: sexual advances, bing, sexual touching, bing, promiscuity, bing, exposure, bing, compulsions, bing, voyeurism, bing. I don't know about the feeling on yourself in public, but I did see a video where he was allowing someone else to feel on him in public. So, that's a halfway being. Incest, these are rumors and allegations again, but again, we do see that in the family history according to the testimony of the brother Carrie, and as well, he gave a testimony of being molested, but he didn't say it was incestuous, but his brother Carrie did. And obscene phone calls, we don't know the fullness of that, but this is just a list that I found. So let's continue. This is a picture. If you want to call it a theory, call it whatever you want. I'm just putting together the dots, and it's for the professionals to pursue. This is a picture of R. Kelly. Like I said, this is the little boy, the eyes and everything that drew me in. And this is a picture of, because there are some certain facial features that are associated with this condition. Let me make sure everybody's still on before I continue. Hold on. Yep. Okay. And so we see some similarities. This picture on the left here or on your right is kind of black and white, but we do see the thin lip, the smooth, the dip, that's what they call a smooth pilthrum. That's supposed to be a dip. We kind of see that action going on. And then you're probably saying, Amuna, what in the world is this and what does it mean? What in the world is this and what does it mean? Let's continue. Since the day of my birth, I feel like my soul has been on some kind of roller coaster. Sometimes I ask myself, when will this ride stop? Or will it ever stop? And again, that was his opening for his book, Solar Coaster. And another thing that made me say, you know what, look at this. I'm like, wow, he named this Solar Coaster. I knew nothing about the book either. And so if you don't know, a lot of the work I do is Soulonomics. So I thought that was cool using the soul and the soul coaster. But anywho, these are the little things along the way that made me say, let me stop and pay attention here. If only we can learn something for those to come, and prevent some things. So this is a picture that was in his book, Solar Coaster. On one side, he says, my mom wasn't perfect. She had her bad habits. Above all, mom was a praying woman who looked to God or God for a better way. She was a loving woman who protected her 4 children with the strength of a lioness. And that's the picture of his mother. And on his picture, I wanted to do my homework and get all A's. I wanted to prove myself and make my mother proud. But every time I made up my mind to conquer the problem and start reading, every time I opened the book, my mind would turn off. And this is just one of the places that he kept speaking about, and it was reoccurring, his issue or his condition that was always at the front. It's not like, oh, I'm dumb, I'm stupid. And in certain places he was upset where his people would tease him, which we'll speak about it another time. But he was always aware of this condition and wondering what it was. So it was a stumbling block and a level of frustration for him. But his mother would reassure him. She would try with him, according to his testimony, and encourage him towards music as his outlet. And we'll go from there. So this is one of his memories, something that he recalled. I noticed that he did a lot of the work already, because he did the work in recollecting these things and putting it down in a memoir, which is something that I recommend for the healing process. So I'm like, wow, he did a lot of the work and he left it here. He put a lot of the pieces on the table. And if you know what you're looking for or know what you're looking at, it helped to expedite the process. Okay. So he goes on to say, though I've never met or seen my father on special occasions like Christmas and birthdays, my siblings' father would come by and take them shopping for toys and clothes. So already that's a hint for our next discussion. Him and his siblings had different fathers. I never got jealous, but I do remember being sad and curious. That should be in fact, one day when I was about 11 or 12, I decided to ask my mom questions about my father, like, who is he? So he waited a good little time, 11 or 12, he's saying. Where is he? Why doesn't he come to take me out for birthday or bring me anything for Christmas? So as normal child would do, he's inquiring about the whereabouts of his father, knowing that the other people that the other fathers of his siblings are not his, and wondering where his father was. Okay. My mother would just roll her eyes, look away from me, and say, don't say nothing to me about that no good son of a bee. Because the minute he found out I was pregnant with you, his coward blink left. Keep that in mind. That was one of the things that stuck out to me, like, whoa. Disappeared in the wind. She'd say, didn't want to have nothing to do with either you or me. And we're going to look about that more, about the emotional effects of what he experienced. But this is just to set the tone. Concerning music, he says, when the music started flowing through me at first, I was overwhelmed and worried. Why was I hearing so many songs? Musical phrasings, lyrics, and song structure were fully formed in my head long before I could understand what these things really were. Remember, we read about the condition and the possibility of those with the condition are going to be way advanced in music. Even when someone said I had a special gift as a kid, I was scared that it would drive me crazy. Remember, the condition that there's a possibility or the cookie trail is leading me to think has something to do with what he was facing, says that musical advancement is part of the condition. Okay. Okay. At 5, he remembers, I was holding my mother's hand, walking down the street to the nightclub where she had a band, the Six Pack, were going to play. So we'll go a little bit more into that at another time, but I just wanted to make note of the band. So he says, the reason I love my mother so much is she was not perfect and she never claimed to be. I loved her because she was my mother. She had her bad habits. She loved her Winston cigarettes and her Miller Beer. Sometimes she'd drink too much and get sick. My mother wasn't ashamed to talk about her imperfections. She discussed her thoughts, telling me how she wanted to stop drinking and smoking like she did. So these are different parts within the book that he's saying his mother, and this is not one or two times he recalls that she liked Miller Beer and Winston cigarettes. She drank too much and sometimes get sick, and she wanted to stop drinking and smoking. She was very aware of it, but she wasn't able to knock it out. Okay. So these I found, I went to the 8, 9, 70s. So hopefully I did it justice. Not sure, he didn't say it was a can, but the six pack was the name of the band. So I'm thinking possibly it was in a can. So she was smoking cigarettes and drinking beer. And for those who just joined us, we're talking about unraveling R. Kelly. Is he brain damaged? We're looking at information that was left on record from his own memoirs, the interviews, and certain information that is available to us to take a look at. Possibly what other than the things that we are seeing is going on, like what is behind, what is underneath the surface. For those who just joined us, you missed a lot. So I know probably after this, you're gonna have to go back and take a look. So this is another quote. One afternoon after school, I was walking home, glad to be out of the classroom, again, the fear of the classroom, when I heard a song blasting from our front porch. It was Kung Fu Fighting. That song always made me happy, and seeing Mom and Lucius, which was the stepfather, on the front porch drinking their, once again, Millers. I could see they were getting happy too. They were dancing and hungry like newlyweds, carrying on like they didn't have a care in the world. But then Lucius said something to Mom that she didn't like, and suddenly things started to change. Didn't take much for things to change when Mom and Lucius were drinking. So he brings up the fact that his mother wasn't perfect, and he brings up the fact that she leaned on drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. Okay. Oh, did I miss one? So this is another space where he goes on to say, service went on, speaking about church and them going to church. Service went on so long, I usually couldn't help but nod off. One time, I don't know how long I'd been snoozing when a scream woke me up. It was my mother, Joanne Kelly, has caught the Holy Ghost and was shaking and shivering like she had some terrible fever. She was yelling out, "Ain't gonna smoke no more, G-O-D." She was crying and talking in tongues, reaching into her purse, grabbing her pack of cigarettes and throwing them in the aisle. "No more," she was yelling. "Ain't gonna touch another one of these cancer sticks for the rest of my life." After church, we went home for a big Sunday dinner, which was always delicious. We were filled up and satisfied. My mother was drinking her coffee when she leaned over and whispered to me, "Run over to Mr. Eichenberg's and get me a pack of Winston." "But Mom," I started to say, "you heard me, boy, now go." When I got back, my mother was waiting for me at the door. She took her Winstons, went to the bathroom, locked the door behind her, and lit up. So again, he was aware of the struggle his mother had. She was aware of it, but she also used him as to support that struggle. So he's seeing somebody who he has all of this love and adoration for struggle and not able to overcome her own struggle with drinking Miller Lite or Miller beer and smoking cigarettes. Now, this, as I was researching, if you don't know where we're going as yet with this, just hold on just a little bit longer because we're almost there. And this is a Bible verse, Judges 3:13-7, speaking about the Nazarite vow. And this is Manoah and Samson's mother being given instruction. And it says, "Behold, you shall not conceive, you shall conceive and bear a son. And now drink no wine, nor strong drink, neither eat anything, any unclean thing." Sorry, neither eat any unclean thing. Mona, what does that have to do with anything? Let's proceed. Based on the research, there is a likely possibility, and I'm using my words, there's a likely possibility that Robbie Kelly's beautiful disease, which is what he described his ailment as, his hidden disability, which is what it's called on record, his brain damage, which is what one of the specialists said, could be a result of, and I have to give another disclaimer. Please note these findings are based on public observations and deduction of the information available to the public. This is not an attempt to absolve Robert Kelly of any wrongdoings, but to shed some much needed light on this very complex issue. Hours of research and years of personal training has gone into connecting these dots. You are implored to follow up, do your own research, and help this information get into the hands of those who can benefit from it. So, what could potentially be his hidden disability? I don't know. Anybody, let me know your thoughts on what you think his possible hidden disability could be. Let's hit it. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is an umbrella term describing the range of effects that can occur in an individual who is exposed to alcohol during the 9-month prenatal period before birth. Alcohol-related neurodevelopment disorder. This is fetal alcohol spectrum disorders is an umbrella, and some of these things are under that umbrella. There is mild to extreme. There's a rating system to the level of exposure of alcohol and the effects that it has on the individual. Alcohol-related neurodevelopment disorder. People with ARND might have intellectual disabilities and problems with behavior and learning. They might do poorly in school and have difficulties with math, memory, attention, judgment, and poor impulse control. I'll read that again. They may do poorly in school. He dropped out, had problems all the way, felt like he shouldn't have got passed. Failed elementary school. They passed him because he was on the team, and all along everybody was giving him a pass. And have difficulties with math, memory, attention, judgment, and poor impulses. 1 in 10 babies have found FASD, nearly the same rate as autism. FASD is more prevalent than Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, SIDS, cystic fibrosis, and spina bifida combined. Alcohol use during pregnancy is the leading preventable cause of birth defects, developmental disabilities, and learning disabilities. Now, if you can remember all of the blanks that I put, all of those connected dots that I put earlier, and I'll just go back there a little bit so we can read them once again. All of those things that I put in the beginning, FASD was what these syndromes were for, and all of the information is on the bottom, so you don't have to believe me. Feel free to click the link. Alcohol causes more harm than heroin or cocaine during pregnancy. The Institute of Medicine says of all the substances of abuse, including cocaine, heroin, and marijuana, alcohol produces by far the most serious neurobehavior effects in the fetus. Now, his mother has passed, creator rest her soul at this point. What I've put together was what was in the forefront of his mind. I kept saying, why did he keep recalling his mother smoking and drinking? He did it on more than 1, more than 2, more than 3 occasions. He also kept recalling his disability on more than 1, more than 2, more than 3 occasions. Is there a connection? This is the only question I'm asking. Robert Sylvester Kelly was born January 8, 1967. He was 6 years old when the term fetal alcohol syndrome was coined by Kenneth L. Jones and David W. Smith, 2 pediatric, and please excuse me, dysmorphologists who rediscovered the telltale signs of alcohol exposure in infants at birth and notable in early childhood. So basically, they say early prevention. At the time that he's born and beginning to grow and showing these developmental delays, this information is not widely known. And as you can see, some 40 years later, this information is still not widely known. And so being misdiagnosed, as we read in the beginning, or overlooked throughout your life is very plausible, okay? If by chance he was exposed to alcohol in the womb, the next chapter of his roller coaster life would be sure to exacerbate his possible pre-existing birth condition. Meaning that if he was, like I said, if he was exposed to alcohol in the womb, we do know he has memories of it being around him. Those who were around his mother would know. But what are some of the reasons why he wouldn't know? But let me go back a little bit before I go forward, okay? Let's go back and let's do the filling. Okay. So FASD is widely understood to be a hidden disability, okay? That's the fetal alcohol syndrome. Although it has been over 40 years since the harmful effects of FASD were identified in medical literature, the majority of individuals with FASD of any age are not properly diagnosed, okay? I'm going back to fill it in now. People with FASD may struggle to socialize with others their own age. It may be difficult for them to realize that a person might pretend to be a friend in order to take advantage of the individual with FASD. That means their impulses are compromised, their judgment is compromised, their ability to perceive certain things are compromised. This can have serious psychological, criminal, and financial consequences. It is important that people with FASD understand what is a healthy relationship. Lying can occur when a person with FASD has poor memory and creates a story to fill in the gaps. People with FASD or fetal alcohol syndrome frequently possess artistic or musical talents which exceed even that of the typical person of their age. Research has estimated that 18-year-old person with FASD has artistic abilities similar to a 29-year-old. People with fetal alcohol syndrome are also talented storytellers, actors, and comedians. Music can also be an outlet to release anger, revenge, or other strong emotions. Like when I was reading over this, one of the songs that came to my mind is the person was always telling you to a certain degree what was on their mind. And because it was told in a story type form, because of the musical genius, it was taken as entertainment. But some of the testimonies from the women are he will give you things and then demand sexual pleasure from you. Okay. But he wrote a song that says, "You must be used to me spending and all that sweet whining and dining." And then you fill in the blank. So at what point, anyway, but I'll continue. When it becomes difficult to communicate with words, a person with FASD can use music to express how he or she feels. Like those suffering from mental illness or traumatic brain injury, people with FASD often use music as therapy. Based on the studies of 415 individuals with diagnosed fetal alcohol syndrome from the age of 6 to 51, he just turned 52, 2 weeks ago or a week ago. Okay. So it ranges. And because people get into the older age and has never been diagnosed, it's just the symptoms of the behavior that are highlighted, and the actual root cause and the correct information that can, what's the word I'm looking for? Because it is damage. If this is the case, it is neurological damage. And so the person will have to learn coping mechanisms. So the lifestyle that the individual is living at this time is not contributing or is not helping at all to their issue. Okay. If this is their issue. This research shows that about half of the individuals with fetal alcohol syndrome reported having been in trouble with the law or had repeated problems with inappropriate sexual behavior. Okay. I'm going. Okay, so now we can go forward. And again, the lip over here, you can see this is Department Washington EDU. This is they have a whole team, whole task force, whole non-for-profit that looks at the effects of alcohol on the fetus, and they follow them through from childhood, from babies, from childhood up until adulthood. And so I just found it interesting when I saw this and I went back and looked at the picture. I was like, wow, look at this. Okay, so we're going to go forward here. I'm just saying there's a possibility. Okay. Okay, so this is a woman who on the site, again, that's like I said, it's a non-for-profit, no fuss is the name of it. You can check it out. And so this is one of the women, and something just told me click on her video. Right? Because what would say, let's say hypothetically, we have to say hypothetically, because this is a hypothesis, right? Hypothetically, if his mother, who struggled as he testified, and she vacillated between church and the club, because she was a singer and she had a band and she was in the club, he was aware of her drinking and smoking. And she had this, we see that she had this struggle with it. If there was a possibility that she did drink before she knew she was pregnant. We don't know if it's before she knew she was pregnant, during her pregnancy, at some point, say she was drinking during or before she understood that she was pregnant. How would that have affected her when she realized that the child has some developmental delays. Because I noticed that during the narrative that he shared, in some spaces, his mother would coddle him. And I found that to be interesting. But it says, I'm a birth mom, and this is Arlene is the name of the woman. I'm a birth mom. My son is 20 years old, but for years, he struggled. Me protecting myself. This is what she's saying. This is not his mother, but this is someone who had a child and who realized that the child had FAS, or fetal alcohol syndrome. And she's saying the reason why she wasn't willing to come to terms with it. Me protecting myself wouldn't say anything about my alcohol and drug use when I was pregnant. So she was using alcohol and drugs while she was pregnant, but she wanted to protect herself because automatically the person's going to come for the mother. What was you thinking? I had him quit quite early. He struggled and we just blamed it on developmental issues. So this is also what keep coming up in R. Kelly's story is developmental issues, or he's having, issues with just reading. But he says in the beginning that he was well aware that this is more than just issues with reading. This mother, Arlene, says, I suffer from the disease of addiction, which I had no idea of then, because I really thought I can stop. I had some inkling that this could hurt my child. But when you're young, you think this can't happen to me. So this is some places where people say a little bit of alcohol, a shot of wine every now and then, a can of beer, it is not going to help. It's not going to hurt. And so she's saying she had an inkling that it can hurt, but she was like, nah, it's not going to happen to me. Again, like I said, there's a whole psychiatric law, there's whole conferences. This is a real thing, okay? So this is experts on FASD and criminal justice for those who want to do research. This is from the person who's on the screen is not the judge. The judge, like there's a number of people who testify. The judge says, Honorable Judge Anthony Wartnick, you can't view a person with FASD the same as you might view somebody with a different intellectual disability. Again, I'm not saying this is good. This is not me saying it. But if this person does have brain damage, if this person does have this or something else, then how are you? It doesn't negate what the person has done, but it does bring understanding to what contributed to the person doing this. Because we are talking about a disability that is caused by brain damage. Richard Adler, MD, says these folks don't function very well. They function like the mildly mentally retarded. And again, this is no diss. He's talking about the functioning capacity in certain areas because of the brain damage that suppressed other areas like reasoning, the ability to understand cause and effect to a certain degree. There's someone else testify that you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and not really learning. This is what we see in this case. And then he also went on to say they over-confess, and automatically I thought of the 19-minute confession song that was released last year with 19 minutes of confession, okay? Again, that's something you can look up as well. And so at the end, I say sip on that for a while. Stay tuned for part 2 of Unraveling R. Kelly Soulonomics style. So for those who have missed what in the world was Amuna talking about, you can definitely go back to the beginning. I see 1 and 2 typos that I'm going to fix. I haven't heard this particular part of the story. I did see they had the therapist in the session on the surviving R. Kelly, but I really didn't hear anybody really addressing the core or the possible core of what allowed him after how many years? 20 plus years to be still accused of similar things. You know what I'm saying? It's not like one time, a long time ago, like more and more people are accusing him of the same thing. And my mind is asking why. So with that, I'll go back to the beginning for those who missed it so that I can read it again. I put the information in there. All I did was connect some of the dots that I saw there. Let me give my little disclaimer once again. Oopsie. Oh no, where did my disclaimer go? I lost my disclaimer. Ooh, I guess I lost my disclaimer, y'all. All right, so that is that. I'll come back with more information. Feel free to share this video. I'm going to come make a shorter video, just getting to the meat and potatoes, because definitely I think it can contribute to the conversation, and the experts can now come out and begin to, hopefully follow the trail. It's not the first time I've had to hear what experts are saying, so-called experts, and do my own research, because that's what we're employed to do, our own research, and then have something to bring to the table to say, well, what have you considered this? If he says no one has been able to diagnose him, and he doesn't really know, and the closest he's gotten is them saying possibly brain damage, then it behooves us to say, okay, there's definitely something going on. What possibly could it be? And have you considered this? And have you considered that? And see what are the things that you can take off the table, and what are the things you can leave on the table to further explore. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you want access to the, because if I was going too fast, or you want the links or access to the file, just let me know, and then I'll share you the link.